Welcome to Cosmic Sleep Science, where oceans sigh in memory and continents whisper of journeys long past. Close your eyes, let your breath slow, and imagine a time when Earth held itself in one vast embrace. Not the scattered continents we know today, divided by restless seas, but a single land, a supercontinent we call Pangea, rising beneath ancient skies and cradled by the waters of a boundless ocean. Tonight, we will walk deserts where no rain fell, trace rivers that fed lush forests, and drift across oceans alive with strange and beautiful forms. Together, we will imagine not only the landscapes, but the feelings of such a world. Its vastness, its stillness, its slow rhythm carrying us toward rest. Where are you right now? Dear listener, perhaps the night is falling where you are, and stars shimmer outside your window, or perhaps dawn is breaking, and the first light paints your walls with warmth. Share your moment in the comments below, so our voices may gather like scattered lands joining once more. If this journey soothes you, if it sparks wonder in your heart, let your support flow gently by liking or subscribing, joining our Cosmic Sleep Science family. It is your presence that keeps these dreams alive. Now, settle deeper, breathe with ease, and let the day drift away. This is not a lecture, but a lullaby of time. Picture the Earth as it was, millions of years ago, holding all its lands in one embrace. Are you ready to step onto Pangea and wander the ancient world together? Chapter 1. The Dream of a Supercontinent. There was a time when the Earth held itself in a single embrace, when all the wandering fragments of land that now stretch apart lay pressed close together, one great continent resting beneath skies that knew no borders. And this ancient wholeness we call Pangea, a name born of gentle Greek roots that mean all earth. A phrase so simple yet carrying the hush of infinity, as if the planet itself once whispered of unity, as if its body remembered being whole. And around this mass of stone and soil stretched an endless sweep of water, a single superocean known as Panthalassa, a mirror vast enough to hold the light of stars and the drift of winds, where waves could travel unbroken for thousands upon thousands of miles before greeting the shore. And the pulse of Earth's tides was slower, deeper, as if the heartbeat of the planet breathed through one wide sea and one wide land, a rhythm unbroken by fracture. If you close your eyes, you might imagine it. The forests and deserts and rivers of that ancient land rolling without interruption. No Atlantic to divide them, no Pacific to set them apart, but a single reach of soil where creatures roamed freely across distances we can scarcely hold in thought. And this vision is not born of dream alone, for the truth of Pangea belongs to the memory of Earth itself, a chapter written not in human words but in the strata of stone, in the marks left by winds that blew long before we named the sky. And in 1912, a quiet voice in science began to call this memory back. Alfred Wegener, a man who noticed that the coastlines of continents seemed to yearn for each other, the curve of South America fitting gently into the hollow of Africa, as if they were torn pages from the same ancient book. And from this observation he proposed a daring thought, that once these lands were one, a supercontinent bound in the deep past. And though many doubted him then, time and discovery have slowly turned their gaze toward his vision, until the picture of Pangea stands not only as dream, but as truth. Between 335 and 175 million years ago, this vast continent lived, breathing through forests thick with ferns and rivers heavy with life. Its days slow beneath sunlit skies, its nights held by constellations that shone upon a single shore. And though the years have broken it into the world we know now, there is still a hush in our imagination when we speak its name. as if the earth itself remembers its great embrace. The story of Pangea does not rest only in imagination, for the earth leaves signs for those who know how to listen. And these signs are scattered like puzzle pieces across the continents, quiet witnesses waiting to be noticed. And one of the most striking is the fossil of a small creature called Mesosaurus, found both in South America and Africa, two lands now separated by an ocean. Yet this delicate reptile could never have swum across such vast waters. And so its bones speak softly of a time when those continents were joined, when rivers flowed where seas now roll. And the pattern repeats again with the leaves of Glossopteris, a fern once thriving in warmth, whose imprints are found in rocks across India, Africa, South America, and even Antarctica, a continent we know as frozen silence, but which once lay closer to the equator, cloaked in green and heavy with growth, the fossils still whispering of a gentler past. There are deeper clues carved by ice itself, long scratches etched into rocks in Africa and India, marks that tell of glaciers dragging their weight across stone. Though today such lands know only heat, and the mystery clears only when we see them as part of the southern stretch of Pangea, where ice once spread across the heart of the supercontinent, binding lands together in a shared winter, a memory pressed into stone. Even the mountains carry the story, for ranges that stand far apart today align when the continents are fitted back into place. The Appalachians in North America rising like an echo of the Caledonides in Scotland and Scandinavia, the ridges and folds completing each other across the Atlantic divide, as if they were a single spine broken by distance but not by origin, still holding the same rhythm in their rock. Even beneath the frozen waste of Antarctica, coal lies buried. Black seams born of forests that once rose lush and tall, impossible to imagine now in a place ruled by ice. And yet there they rest. Proof that the land we see as eternal frost once lay in warmer latitudes. Its trees falling and pressing into the soil of Pangea, waiting silently through millions of years until human hands brought their story to light. Each of these fragments is a piece of a puzzle scattered by time. Fossils and stui and scars of ice fitting together like the whispers of a memory too large for one place alone. And when we gather them, the picture forms slowly, patiently, like the earth guiding us back to what it once was. One land, one ocean, one vast embrace beneath the open sky. Beyond the embrace of land, there stretched the embrace of sea, and in that age the waters were gathered into a single immensity. The superocean called Panthalassa, a body so vast it covered nearly 70% of the Earth's face. A mirror that curved from horizon to horizon, swallowing all distance, all boundary. In the language of waves, imagine standing upon the shore of Pangea, no matter where you stood, before you opened an ocean without end. No islands to break the rhythm, only the hush of swells rising and falling under a sky without interruption. And this vast water was not empty but alive, shaping the world in silence. Beneath the surface, currents coiled and drifted like breath, their movements circling the globe, stirring nutrients and carrying warmth from one side of the world to another, weaving invisible threads that fed the earliest marine ecosystems. In these hidden highways of water, life clustered and evolved, delicate forms dancing in suspension, each current guiding their growth like a soft, unseen hand. And the ocean became not only the cradle of life, but the sculptor of its future. The breath of the ocean also carried oxygen, rising and falling through time, a pulse that sometimes offered abundance, at other times thinning into scarcity. And in this rhythm, entire species flourished or faded, evolution itself bowing to the sway of Panthalassa. It was not a quiet stage, but a living one, where every fluctuation in water and air set the course of life upon Earth. Yet amidst this expanse, richness gathered along the edges of the continent. The continental shelves where sunlight reached and nutrients stirred, where reefs grew luminous and shoals of life swarmed in density, as if the ocean poured its gifts closest to the land, drawing a fragile balance between earth and sea. In this vision, we see Panthalassa not as a mere expanse of water, but as the breathing body of the planet, covering most of the earth yet leaving the whisper of abundance pressed close to Pangea's shores. A reminder that even in vastness, life seeks the edges, where land and ocean lean toward each other, and the pulse of the world finds its most tender rhythm. And yet Pangea was not the first dream of wholeness, nor will it be the last, for the earth itself follows a rhythm longer than rivers, deeper than seas, a cycle in which the continents drift apart and return again, as if the planet were breathing in epoch, inhaling to gather land into unity, exhaling to scatter it across the globe. Long before Pangea, there was another, Rodinia, an ancient supercontinent that lived hundreds of millions of years earlier. Its memory faint, but its presence still written in stone. A reminder that Earth's story is one of continual joining and parting. A dance measured not in lifetimes, but in eons. When we imagine the far future, the cycle whispers forward once more. For the continents that drift apart today will not remain forever scattered. They move still upon the slow currents of the mantle, and in some 250 million years they may return again, closing into a future embrace called Pangea Ultima, another vast continent surrounded by seas, another chapter in the eternal rhythm of Earth. In this thought lies both humility and wonder, that what seems permanent to us is only a fleeting arrangement in the life of the planet, that the face of Earth itself is ever-changing, carrying us along in its timeless breath. This cycle stretches across spans of 300 to 500 million years, long waves of creation and division, each supercontinent forming, breaking, and forming again. A pulse so vast we cannot hold it in ordinary thought. And yet it is the quiet law beneath the surface of our world, the deep tide that shapes the continents and seas we call home. The very breakup of Pangea gave birth to the Atlantic Ocean, a newborn sea that has since grown wide, and it carved the outlines of the modern world, scattering the lands into the shapes and distances we know today. Continents drifting like islands of stone across the surface of the Earth's slow heart. In this dreamlike timeline, we see Pangea not as an end, but as a moment, one breath in the larger rhythm of the planet. A reminder that Earth is never still, that its story is written in cycles beyond our span. And perhaps to imagine this is to rest in a gentler wonder, to know we are carried upon a world that has always moved, always changed, always dreamed itself anew. If this journey soothes your curiosity, let it carry you further. Gently subscribe to Cosmic Sleep Science. Chapter 2. Landscapes of a Lost World. In the heart of Pangea stretched a silence unlike any we know today. A vastness where no sea breeze could reach, where the breath of ocean moisture faded long before it touched the land, leaving the interior bare beneath a merciless sky. This was a desert not bounded by horizon but spread across the middle of the world, larger even than our modern Sahara. A sea of sand whose waves were not water but dunes rolling endlessly, shimmering beneath the weight of the sun. To walk here in imagination is to feel the heat pressing down without mercy, the ground glowing in red and gold, the air quivering as if the very sky were burning with thirst. The evidence of this desert remains, written in stone older than memory, layers of sandstone piled high like pages of a book that only the earth itself can read. These formations tower still in certain places, their massive walls carved by time, silent testaments to an age when wind ruled the center of the supercontinent. Within their grains lies the record of shifting dunes hardened into permanence, the fleeting movement of sand captured and held for hundreds of millions of years. They are not just rocks, but whispers of an ancient world where dryness reigned without end. Geologists call some of these layers red beds, their color born from iron, touched by air in long stretches of aridity. The red is not accidental. It is the echo of ancient deserts, the very pigment of absence, the hue of a sky with no rain. When you gaze upon these rocks, you are not merely seeing color, but touching the silence of a climate so dry that even stone remembers it. And in imagining this world, we feel the scale of Pangea, the way its great heart lay cut off from ocean breezes, leaving life to struggle at its center while only the edges knew relief. Thus, the desert of Pangea was not a corner of earth, but the very soul of its middle. A furnace without mercy, a canvas painted in sand and wind, vast beyond imagining, where the bones of the land itself still carry the story of thirst. Yet Pangea was never only one thing, for while its heart lay trapped in stillness and heat, its edges told a different story. The coasts of this great continent faced the restless moods of the sea, where storms gathered strength and rains arrived with furious rhythm. The contrast was absolute, the central deserts burning beneath endless suns, while the shores were lashed by monsoons that came and went like the heartbeat of seasons. In one world there was silence of sand, in the other the roar of wind and water, two extremes held within the same embrace of land. The continental interior knew summers so scorching that the very soil cracked open, followed by winters sharp and freezing, the absence of ocean's steadying hand leaving the land to swing between fire and ice. Such extremes pressed upon life, demanding resilience, and the record of this hardship remains even in the fossils of ancient trees. Their growth rings carry the scars of the seasons, narrow bands formed in years of drought, wider rings in years of fleeting relief, each line a whisper of survival etched into wood turned to stone. They speak of plants stretching roots deep for water, of forests pausing growth until the storms returned, of an earth whose climate never rested but swung like a pendulum between scarcity and brief abundance. Along the edges of Pangea, the rains fell hard, seasonal monsoons striking the coasts with thunder, feeding rivers and swamps, carving channels through soil before retreating again to leave parched silence in their wake. Life gathered in these margins, drawn to the cycles of plenty and hunger, adapting to a rhythm that could not be predicted but only endured. Even the air carried the memory of change, for shifts in carbon isotopes preserved in ancient deposits reveal the pattern of aridity, the waxing and waning of dry cycles, the long breath of a continent that alternated between thirst and flood. Thus, Pangea was a world of contrasts, a land where deserts without end stood beside coasts of storm and rain, where the same sun could scorch or nourish depending on distance from the sea, where life survived not by certainty but by surrender to change. It is a reminder that Earth has never been uniforms, that even in its ancient wholeness it held multitudes, climates clashing like voices in a choir, shaping the forms of plants and animals that dared to endure its extremes. Rising from the union of lands came mountains, ancient guardians born from the slow embrace and collision of continents, their peaks lifting like prayers into misty skies. The story of Pangea was not only one of deserts and seas, but also of stone pressed upward, ridges raised where plates met and folded, summits carved from the weight of continents converging. The Appalachians, whose softened slopes still line the eastern edge of North America, were once higher, sharper. Born during the great assembly of Pangea itself, their stones remember the moment when the land of Laurentia pressed against Gondwana, when the world stitched itself together with mountains as its seam. Far across the ocean today, the Atlas Mountains of North Africa share this same heritage, raised in that same convergence, their roots part of the same ancient event. To walk among them is to step across the pages of Pangea, to feel in stone the memory of a time when the continents were not scattered but drawn close. And stretching far to the north and east, the Ural Mountains still rise, a long spine dividing what we call Europe and Asia, their ridges marking the line where two ancient lands collided, where Pangea's breath was bound together. Yet even as these peaks rose, erosion began its patient work, softening their heights, carrying stone down into valleys, spreading rich soils across plains. Rivers cut through the folds, carrying minerals and silt, leaving fertile ground in their wake. What was born in violence became a gift. For the valleys of Pangea nourished forests, swamps, and the early life that clung to its edges. The mountains stood as guardians, but their generosity lay in what they gave away: stone ground into soil, ridges broken into rivers, the patience of time turning collision into cradle. Thus the mountains of Pangea were not only barriers but fountains, rising in grandeur and giving life as they weathered, their silhouettes etched against the sky like ancient sentinels, their roots still whispering the memory of a world drawn into one. Between these mountains and deserts ran the rivers, lifelines threading through Pangea, carrying water and soil, weaving together the scattered worlds of forest, swamp, and plain. Along their banks, life gathered in abundance. For in that age, coal-forming swamps spread thick and wide, their wetlands dense with towering plants, their shadows filled with the calls of early creatures. Over time, these swamps pressed their richness into the earth, layer upon layer of vegetation sinking into darkness, forming seams of coal that would one day fuel the fires of distant civilizations. But in their own time they were havens, humid sanctuaries where the air was heavy with green. Among the plants that flourished here was Glossopteris, a fern-like tree whose fossils have been found across continents, silent proof of unity. Their leaves, simple yet strong, once covered vast stretches of Pangea, feeding the air with breath, shading the swamps where amphibians crept and reptiles began to rise. The fossils whisper still, their impressions pressed into stone across South America, India, Africa, Antarctica, a shared language of roots and leaves scattered by time yet remembering a common soil. The rivers themselves carried more than water. They carried stories of change, shifting their courses over centuries, carving new paths across the land. Sediment left behind tells us of these movements, layers of mud and silt marking ancient waterways long vanished. Within them we find the imprint of scales, the trace of leaf, the delicate shape of creatures that lived by the current, each a memory of the lifeline that sustained them. The rivers nourished not only the land but also the imagination, for in their flow we see the patience of earth, shaping quietly, nurturing silently. These forests and rivers were the counterpoint to deserts and storms, offering refuge in the vastness of Pangea. They were soft places in a world of extremes, breathing spaces where life could take root and grow. And though millions of years have passed, their echoes remain in coal seams, in fossils, in layers of soil, whispering across time of a world that was once one. The landscapes of Pangea whisper across time. Let them carry you, and remember to join Cosmic Sleep Science. Chapter 3. Creatures of the Unified Earth. There was a time when the earth breathed through swamps, when slow rivers curled like ribbons across the heart of Pangea, and life found its rhythm in the soft embrace of water. Amphibians, ancient wanderers between two worlds, thrived here. They lingered along the banks where the forest met the stream. Their forms both delicate and resilient, shaped by the need to remain close to the waters that cradled their young. The air was thick with oxygen, nourished by towering forests of ferns and towering club mosses, a canopy that created an almost otherworldly green glow. The ground pulsed with dampness, and every pool reflected the shimmering leaves above like a mirror of endless time. These creatures carried the memory of the ocean in their skin, moist and tender, forever tied to the currents that fed them. In the hush of the Carboniferous twilight, you might imagine labyrinthodont amphibians, their bodies broad and strong, gliding through still waters, or resting on fallen logs polished smooth by rain. Their calls echoed faintly, a chorus across continents now separated. Fossils of their bones scattered like whispers of a dream too vast to hold in one place. They lived in abundance, stretching across Pangea's wetland, proof that life could root itself wherever the earth offered water and shade. But the world was never still. Even as the swamps swelled with life, the seasons shifted, and the skies carried reminders of impermanence. The amphibians thrived, yet they were bound to the pools and rivers, unable to step too far into the dryness that stretched beyond. Their eggs, fragile and soft, required the safety of water, and so they remained tethered, guardians of the liminal space between the flowing streams and the solid earth. They were the dreamers of that ancient age, their presence a bridge between the first breath of fish and the promise of creatures yet to come. And as night fell across the swamps of Pangea, you could almost feel the earth breathing with them. Slow, steady, timeless, yet life does not remain bound. From the same forests and riverbanks emerged a quiet revolution, subtle at first, but destined to change the shape of the world. Reptiles, small and determined, stepped into the dry winds of Pangea's interior. Unlike their amphibian kin, they carried with them a gift, the amniotic egg, a delicate vessel strong enough to hold life without the embrace of water. It was a seed of independence, and with it, reptiles could wander beyond the swamps, into the deserts and rocky lands where no amphibian could endure. Picture Hylonomus, one of the earliest reptiles, moving carefully across the forest floor more than 300 million years ago, tiny in form, yet vast in significance. Its steps marked a turning of the Earth's story. Scales shimmered like protective armor, lungs strong enough to drink the air of arid winds, bodies made to endure where water was scarce. In time, they spread outward, across North America, across Europe, their fossils now telling us of their quiet triumph. While amphibians remained bound to shadowed pools, reptiles ventured into the brightness of the dry land. The great interior of Pangea, harsh and unyielding, began to echo with their presence. Their eggs nestled in warm sand, their bodies pressed into survival, their resilience a hymn to adaptation. The forests that had once favored amphibians now gave shelter to reptiles, who crept among roots and branches, seeking insects and shelter in equal measure. The earth itself seemed to guide them, offering a path into new possibilities. The rise of reptiles did not erase the amphibians, for both shared the land like different verses of the same song, one tethered to the water's edge, the other daring to leave it behind. Together they shaped the pulse of life on Pangea, writing a chapter in the story of survival and change. And as the sun set across those vast lands, casting long shadows across deserts and swamps alike, you could sense the balance of Earth's creatures, each fulfilling a role in the harmony of an ancient, unified world. In the quiet turning of ages, when the land of Pangea stretched as one, new footsteps began to press into the ancient soil. Around 230 million years ago, during the late Triassic, the first dinosaurs appeared, not as thunderous giants, but as small and nimble creatures that moved with the rhythm of a world still finding its balance. They walked alongside early relatives of crocodiles, each shaping their own path across the vast plains and river valleys of the unified Earth. You may imagine them not as sudden rulers, but as humble beginnings, their forms delicate and their movements careful, as if testing the breath of life itself upon solid ground. The land was wide, open, and connected, across what we now call South America, Africa, and Asia. Their fossils would one day be discovered, silent proof that these lands once shared a single embrace. The stones remember what our eyes cannot see, and in their patterns we find the scattered pieces of a whole that no longer exists. Dinosaurs, small at first, carried the seeds of what would one day become giants, their bones whispering of growth, of change, of patience woven into the fabric of time. The Triassic world was not yet dominated by them. Instead, it was a place of sharing, of coexistence. Early crocodile kin lurked near rivers and lakes, their bodies low and quiet, while the first dinosaurs watched the horizon with steps both cautious and curious. In the warmth of Pangea's endless summers and in the bite of its cold winters, they learned to endure. Adaptation was their song, resilience their quiet gift. With every season, they grew stronger, taller, more varied, branching into countless forms that would one day rise into creatures so immense that their shadows could stretch across entire valleys. Imagine them moving slowly across floodplains, where rivers wound their silver threads through forests of conifers and cycads. Small dinosaurs, light and swift, darted through the undergrowth, while others paused in the open, their slender necks lifted to the sky as if listening to the voice of the wind. They were not yet the towering figures of the later Jurassic, but their presence was already a promise, a sketch upon the canvas of life that hinted at the vast mural to come. Their coexistence with crocodile ancestors painted a delicate balance, a reminder that survival was not about dominance, but about fitting into the spaces offered by the Earth. And so the story of dinosaurs began not with thunder, but with stillness, not with conquest, but with persistence. The land carried them gently, and time shaped them patiently, from continent to continent, from fossil to fossil. Their memory lingers, reminding us that even the greatest of Earth's creatures began as small forms finding their place beneath endless skies. In the hush of Pangea, their footsteps marked the beginning of an age, one that would unfold slowly, carrying them from fragile beginnings to a reign that spanned millions of years. To close your eyes and imagine them is to feel the Earth itself dreaming, steady and unbroken, across the silence of deep time. While the land nurtured its walkers, the oceans surrounding Pangea, the vast Panthalassa, carried a world of wonders beneath its shifting surface, covering most of the Earth. It was not an empty expanse, but a realm alive with motion and song. Beneath waves that rolled endlessly, creatures thrived in shapes both strange and familiar, filling the ancient seas with beauty that shimmered like a dream unfolding in water. The ocean held its own kingdoms, just as boundless and essential as the deserts and forests above. Imagine ichthyosaurs gliding through the blue depths, their bodies sleek and streamlined, fashioned by time into forms like ancient dolphins. They swam with grace, darting swiftly through the currents, yet moving as if in harmony with the pulse of the sea itself. Sunlight spilled through the shallows, turning the surface into golden glass, and the ichthyosaurs traced their paths below, weaving a story of endurance and transformation. They breathed the air, yet belonged to the sea, a bridge between two realms, carrying the memory of land into the silence of the deep. Around them drifted ammonites, countless and eternal. Their shells spiraled like galaxies in miniature. They floated through Panthalassa in vast numbers, rising and falling with the tides. Delicate voyagers wrapped in armor of patterned stone. To see them in the mind's eye is to glimpse the poetry of time. Beginnings folded into endings, each coil a quiet testament to resilience. Their fossils now lie scattered across continents, carved into cliffs and mountains, reminders that once the seas were filled with their gentle spirals, an endless dance of life sustained by the rhythms of the water. Not far away, the plesiosaurs moved with their long necks arched like swans of the deep. Their bodies were massive, yet their movements were calm, drifting as if weightless in the embrace of the sea. Some grew to enormous size, becoming like living islands beneath the waves, shadows that passed slowly across the ocean floor. They were guardians of a world unseen, embodying both mystery and power, yet carrying themselves with the stillness of creatures perfectly at home in their element. Around them, schools of fish flashed like liquid silver, scattering at the turn of a tail, while reefs shimmered nearby in quiet bloom. The reefs themselves were living gardens, fragile yet enduring, stretching along shifting continental shelves. Corals grew patiently, forming structures that sheltered countless lives, each branch a hidden chamber, each crevice a refuge. Even as the continents moved and the seas reshaped their borders, the reefs adapted, offering continuity amid change. They were the lungs of the ocean, purifying and sustaining, a reminder that even the smallest creatures could shape the vastness of the sea. In these waters, life was not measured by dominance, but by connection. The ichthyosaurs gliding through twilight, the ammonites drifting like lanterns, the plesiosaurs rising and descending, the corals blooming quietly. Each carried a note in the greater harmony. Together they wove a song as deep as the sky was high, a lullaby of water and time. To imagine the Panthalassa of Pangea is to feel yourself floating too, cradled by currents, hearing the same hush that lulled ancient life into being. And even now, when waves break softly upon our shores, their voice is still there, a whisper carried from that lost ocean, a reminder that the world was once whole, and the sea was its heartbeat. Chapter 4. Skies, Seas, and Climate Rhythms. The sky has always been more than a ceiling. It is the breath of the earth, the unseen rhythm that carries every creature, every forest, every sea saw. Long ago, in the deep folds of time, the air itself held a different song. During the Carboniferous Age, oxygen swelled to heights we can hardly imagine today. Nearly 35% of the atmosphere filled with its brightness. It was as if the very air had been enriched with an endless exhale, making the world feel vast and light. In those days, fires would burn more fiercely, spreading with ease. And the fossil record tells us this through silent fragments of charcoal preserved in stone. Reminders that oxygen not only nourished life, but also fed the flames that swept through ancient forests. Yet as the ages turned and the Permian period arrived, this abundance began to fade. Oxygen declined, and with it the pulse of the world seemed to shift. The air grew heavier, more difficult for life to draw, and many creatures struggled under the weight of this invisible change. At the same time, carbon dioxide, rising and falling like a tide across epochs, began to shape the warmth of the planet. Higher CO2 wrapped the Earth in a subtle blanket, driving temperatures upward and reshaping the climates that creatures depended upon. The land grew hotter, the seas carried a different heat, and the balance of comfort and struggle tilted again. To imagine those skies is to breathe slowly and feel the currents move across your own lungs. In one age, oxygen abundant and fires blazing across dense swamps. In another, oxygen thinned and heat pressing close. The sky, always shifting, always alive, reminded life that nothing remains still. Just as we breathe in and breathe out, so too did the Earth, inhaling richness, exhaling decline, carrying forward the endless cycle of air. Every fossil, every layer of stone, still holds that memory, the record of an atmosphere that changed the course of history. The skies were not merely above, they were within. And to dream of Pangea is to dream also of the breath that once filled its endless expanse. But the skies did more than hold gases. They carried tempests, rains, and droughts, weaving stories in clouds and lightning. Along the coasts of Pangea, super monsoons rose each season, vast storms that swept across the land, carrying sheets of rain heavy enough to remake rivers and wash across valleys. The sound of their downpour would have been like the steady roar of oceans moving inland, filling the air with rhythm and power. Sediments, layered gently over millions of years, still carry the signatures of these winds, patterns etched in stone that tell us the atmosphere was alive with force. Season after season, winds coursed across the continents, strong and determined. They reshaped the surface of Pangea, carrying dust and sand across deserts, bending forests, and pressing against mountains. These winds were more than weather. They were the voice of the planet, speaking in gusts that no creature could ignore. Floodplains, once calm, would be transformed as rivers swelled, spreading into wide lakes and then shrinking again, reshaping the land with every cycle. Creatures adapted to this rhythm, knowing both plenty and scarcity, both abundance and withdrawal. Yet just as there was water in excess, there was also the absence of it. In the deep interiors of Pangea, far from the sea's reach, droughts lingered. Heat pressed against the ground, rivers thinned, and salt deposits marked the memory of evaporated lakes. These were the scars of the Earth, left behind by cycles of dryness that tested the resilience of all who lived there. To stand in such a place would be to feel the stillness of air so heavy that even the horizon seemed to shimmer. Lightning cracked across skies like a cosmic dance, illuminating the vast plains, splitting the silence of dusk. Calm followed. Then storms returned, an endless rhythm of balance and imbalance. The extremes of weather were not chaos, but a cycle, steady as the pulse of a heart. In every drop of rain, in every grain of salt left behind by vanished waters, the earth whispered its truth, that change is the only constant, and that all life is carried by the breath and fury of the skies. The oceans of Pangea were not many but one, an endless expanse called Panthalassa, its waters wrapping the earth in a slow embrace, currents moving like breath, steady and unseen, carrying warmth and life from one horizon to another, every drop in quiet dialogue with the sky above, every tide a heartbeat of the ancient planet. The single current of this ocean circled the globe, flowing around the supercontinent with patience, shaping coasts and sculpting climate, whispering its rhythm into deserts and forests, into mountains and valleys. even into the marrow of creatures who never knew the name of the sea, yet lived by its generosity. The waters did more than cradle continents. They carried the secret balance of the world. For in the deep, the ocean stored carbon like memories locked in silence, keeping the air above from burning too bright, softening the storms, tempering the cold, holding in its body the future of forests and rivers and every breath to come. Coral reefs grew at the edges of this ocean, delicate and abundant, their limestone bones recording the signature of ancient currents, each layer a diary of flowing water, each pattern a song of tides that have long since faded. Yet in their fossils, the music still lingers, fragile and eternal. Thermohaline circulation was born of salt and temperatures, of heat carried across latitudes and depths, sinking down like thoughts too heavy to rise. Currents that shaped not only seas but skies, not only shores but hearts. For climate is the mother of every story the earth tells. And Panthalassa was the storyteller, patient and slow, unrolling its tale with the calm of eternity. The ocean's surface shimmered in light, restless with wind, but far below in the deep, time moved like a dream, carbon and silence entwined, feeding the hidden rhythms of life. So the ocean was a circle without end, a soft turning of waters around the whole earth, a cradle of circulation that linked all places, that whispered to deserts why they must remain dry, that told forests when the rains would fall, that shaped the very stage upon which creatures walked and grew. And though Panthalassa has long dissolved into seas we now know by many names, its memory is still with us. In every tide and every wind, in every coral skeleton that speaks of currents that once embraced the whole earth like a single breath. The sea does not live apart from the sky. They breathe as one body, the ocean lifting itself into clouds, the sky pouring itself back into waves. A cycle so constant and so gentle that even mountains bowed to its rhythm. And so it was in the time of Pangea, when Panthalassa and the atmosphere danced as partners, one giving, one receiving, each shaping the other with patience. Ocean evaporation filled the sky with vapor, a soft veil rising each morning, drifting far across the land until it fell as monsoon rains that struck the coasts with steady rhythm. Storms that carved rivers and fed forests, storms that carried the breath of the sea into the soil of the earth. In return, the sky offered carbon to the waters. For the ocean was not only the receiver of rain, but the keeper of air, exchanging invisible gases with patience, storing carbon when the sky grew heavy, releasing it when the balance shifted. A quiet dialogue that wove climate into every season, into every life that stirred under ancient suns. The rise and fall of this exchange determined not only warmth and chill, but the productivity of the seas. For when nutrients rose from the deep, plankton bloomed like stardust in water, feeding creatures vast and small. While at other times the ocean grew silent and lean, its surface a mirror of stillness. Fossils now carry the marks of these shifts, shells and skeletons telling us that even in silence the ocean spoke, recording the history of plenty and hunger. Sea levels too moved with the breath of the world, sometimes rising as ice melted from hidden glaciers, sometimes falling as cold gathered and locked water in frozen silence. And each change redrew the edges of continents, revealing plains that would vanish again, covering valleys that would one day reappear, the earth always in motion, always breathing between sea and sky. In this great cycle, creatures were shaped. Forests grew or shrank, deserts spread or retreated. For nothing on land was free from the conversation of ocean and atmosphere. Nothing could escape the embrace of their balance. To imagine it now is to picture the surface of Panthalassa merging with the heavens, the line between sea and cloud dissolving into a single dream. Water becoming vapor, vapor becoming rain. Each drop rising and falling in an endless cycle, as if the planet itself were breathing through the sea and sky, steady and calm, carrying life forward through storms and silences alike. The skies and seas of Pangea were not separate realms, but one flowing body, a breath that carried warmth and water across the earth, weaving climates and stories. And as their rhythm drifts across time, it may guide you too into rest. Stay close to Cosmic Sleep Science. Chapter 5. The Slow Dance of Continents. There is a kind of silence that allows the earth to whisper its secrets. And a century ago, a man named Alfred Wegener listened. In 1912, he shared an idea that felt more like a dream than science. That continents were not still but drifting. That the wide oceans we see today were once closed. That lands we call separate had once embraced. His thought seemed fragile, like candlelight in a dark hall, but it carried warmth, a vision of a living earth whose skin shifted with time. He saw the outline of South America and Africa, and noticed they fit like puzzle pieces gently parted, edges echoing each other as if once joined. That shape alone might have been coincidence, yet Wegener kept looking, searching for the evidence that stone and fossil could provide, and what he found was too consistent to ignore. He studied the remains of Mesosaurus, a small reptile that swam in fresh waters, its bones found in both South America and Africa. Such a creature could not have crossed a salty ocean, its fragile body tied to rivers and lakes. And yet there it was, its memory preserved on opposite sides of the Atlantic. The only explanation was that the lands had once been one, and the ocean had come later. The rocks too told their story. Layers of stone in South America matched those in Africa, colors and minerals aligning as if they were pages torn from a single book. Even the scars of ancient glaciers appeared where they should not have been, carved into the bedrock of tropical Africa, proof that this land had once rested closer to the poles where ice pressed heavy upon it. Each clue was quiet, but together they formed a chorus that whispered the same message. Wegener's vision was not welcomed easily. Many dismissed him, saying continents could not move, that the earth was fixed. But his story was told like a fable beside firelight. A gentle tale of drifting lands, of deserts once green, of mountains born when continents collided, of rivers cut when they parted. He spoke of Earth not as dead stone, but as something alive, breathing and changing, carrying its lands slowly through time. Though many doubted him, the seed of his idea took root, and in the years to come, others would water it with new discoveries, until the world understood that he had glimpsed a truth too vast to deny. The continents do not sleep where they are. They drift. They journey. They are dancers in the long haul of time. The story of drifting continents needed a heartbeat, and that heartbeat was found in the discovery of plate tectonics, the hidden engine beneath our feet. The Earth is not a silent stone, but a layered being, its crust divided into vast plates that float upon a mantle of molten rock, moving slowly yet endlessly. Each plate shifts only centimeters in a year, but given millions of years, they wander across oceans, gather into supercontinents, break apart, and begin again. It is a dance too slow for human eyes, but it is the very rhythm of our planet. The plates move because the mantle itself stirs. Heat from deep within the earth rises upward, currents of molten rock moving like a tide that never ceases. These currents carry the plates, lifting them at mid-ocean ridges where new crust is created, glowing with the fire of the planet's breath. At these ridges, oceans open like unfolding scrolls, lines of newborn rock marking the passage of time across the sea floor. From there, the plates drift outward, bearing continents as if they were rafts upon invisible rivers. But where plates meet, the dance is not always soft. Sometimes they collide, and mountains rise skyward. Their peaks, the wrinkles of continents, press together. The Appalachians, the Himalayas, the Andes, each one a testament to collisions written in stone. At other places, one plate slides beneath another in a process called subduction, old crust sinking back into the mantle, swallowed to be melted and reborn. The earth recycles itself in this endless rhythm. Crust created, crust destroyed, yet the whole always alive. This motion explains not only mountains and oceans, but earthquakes, volcanoes, and even the shape of climates. It tells us that the continents are not fixed, but wanderers, carried on the back of plates across the surface of the earth. It shows us that Pangea was not an accident, but a chapter in a longer cycle, that before it other supercontinents had formed, and after it new ones will gather again. So the continents are not still. They are dancers moving to the music of the mantle. Their steps slow, their waltz eternal. The seafloor tells us this in ridges and trenches. The mountains echo it in their peaks. The very breath of the earth speaks it in fire and stone. What Wegener imagined as drifting continents became known as plate tectonics, the engine of a living world. A reminder that the ground beneath us is not silence but motion, not fixed but flowing, not dead but alive with the breath of time. There comes a time in every union when the quiet pressure beneath the surface grows too strong to ignore. And so it was with Pangea. About 175 million years ago, the supercontinent that had gathered Earth's lands into a single embrace began to crack. The motion was not sudden, not violent in the way storms are, but patient. A slow stretching of stone that took millions of years. It began deep beneath the crust, where heat stirred the mantle and pushed upward, creating rift valleys that split the land like lines of destiny unfolding across the skin of the earth. Imagine standing on that ancient soil and watching fissures appear, not as sharp explosions but as glowing seams. Basaltic lava seeped upward, filling the cracks with molten fire, then cooling into dark stone that marked the place where Pangea's heart was opening. These rifts lengthened, linking together in networks that stretched from what is now North America down toward Africa, writing the first letters of a story that would one day become the Atlantic Ocean. The air would have smelled of sulfur, the ground warmed by molten rivers that traveled unseen below. Yet above, forests still grew, creatures still wandered, unaware that the world beneath their feet was rearranging itself in silence. The breakup of Pangea was not a catastrophe to life in a single moment, but a long migration of land and sea. Basalt flows spread across vast plains, darkening the landscape with hardened sheets of volcanic stone. Each eruption was brief compared to the whole, but together they traced the path of a supercontinent that could no longer remain whole. As the rift valleys widened, the seas crept in. First narrow channels, then widening basins, and at last the beginnings of an ocean. Water filled the spaces where land had separated, and the Atlantic Ocean was born, not in a roar, but in the slow seep of tides over broken earth. This was the breath of a planet reshaping itself, as natural and unhurried as the rise and fall of sleep. Pangea did not shatter. It drifted apart gently, each fragment carried by the unseen currents of the mantle below. What began as a single crack grew into the architecture of oceans and continents, a rearrangement that would sculpt the face of Earth for the rest of time. The breakup was slow, inevitable, the quiet turning of a page in a book too vast for human years. From the slow cracking of Pangea, new shapes emerged, like rafts drifting free upon a wide sea. The supercontinent divided into two great halves, Gondwana in the south and Laurasia in the north. They floated gently apart, each carrying the seeds of the lands we now know. The breakup was not a single event but a patient unfolding, the continents shifting with the rhythm of the mantle, drifting like dreamers across the surface of the earth. Gondwana itself began to fragment. South America pulled away from Africa, their once joined coastlines still visible in the way their shapes echo each other. Across the widening Atlantic, basalt ridges rose where new crust formed, marking the line of separation. Africa remained anchored to the equator, while South America drifted westward, carrying rainforests that would one day echo with the cries of parrots and the flow of the Amazon River. Farther east, India broke from the southern landmass and began a journey unlike any other. It sailed northward with surprising speed, as if urged on by an unseen current, racing across the ancient Tethys Sea. In time, it would collide with Asia, pushing skyward the towering Himalayas, mountains still rising today, their snowy summits the record of continents embracing once again. Australia, too, drifted away, severing its tie with Antarctica and moving into open seas. Alone, it carried marsupials and unique plants that would evolve in isolation, shaping a continent unlike any other. Antarctica itself slipped southward, cloaked in ice, becoming a silent witness to the dance of continents farther north. Laurasia, in the north, divided as well. North America and Eurasia parted company, though they remain faintly connected at the North Atlantic Ridge, where new crust still emerges from the deep. Greenland, caught between them, drifted slowly toward its icy fate. The continents had found their own paths, yet they remained bound in a slow choreography, their movements guided by the heat of Earth's hidden engine. What we see today, the familiar outline of continents on a globe, is only one frame in this endless dance. The plates still move, oceans still widen, mountains still rise. South America drifts farther from Africa each year. The Himalayas continue to climb, and Australia presses northward toward Asia. The dance does not end. It only changes tempo. The birth of today's continents was not an explosion, but a drifting, a long and gentle letting go, a reminder that even stone yields to time. The earth breathes slowly, and with each breath, the shape of the world shifts. What began as Pangea's embrace has become the continents we know, each one a wanderer, each one still moving. The slow dance of Earth's continents continues even now. Drift with us, and subscribe to Cosmic Sleep Science. The continents have not stopped their wandering. Even now, beneath our feet, the plates move, silent as breath, steady as tides. The Atlantic Ocean grows wider with each passing year, its basin stretched as new crust rises from the mid-Atlantic ridge. South America drifts farther from Africa, an ocean flowing between them like a message written in water. The Himalayas rise still, pushed upward by the meeting of India and Asia, their snowy peaks the living memory of a collision that has never ended. Every tremor, every quake, is a whisper of the planet's deep engine, a reminder that Earth is alive and restless. Australia drifts northward, toward Asia, carrying its ancient deserts and coral reefs into warmer seas. In the Pacific, the plates press and grind. Islands rise and fall. Volcanoes send fire into the night. Though we measure time in years and generations, The continents move in measures far slower, measured not by lifetimes but by ages. Centimeters each year may seem too small to notice, but across millions of years, the change is vast. Oceans widen, mountains crumble, islands emerge. The Earth is never still, even when it feels quiet under our feet. Fossils tell the story of where lands once joined. The shapes of coastlines tell us how they once fit together. But the present tells us what is still unfolding. The drift of continents is not a story that ended with Pangea's breakup. It is a dance still in motion, one that will continue long after us. To watch the Earth this way is to listen for a rhythm so deep, so slow, that it feels like silence. Yet in that silence is motion, patient and steady. The continents are dancers on a stage of stone, and the dance has no end. If the continents drift apart, they may also drift together again. The Earth has seen more than one supercontinent before Pangea, and it will see another. Scientists call it a cycle, the slow breathing of continents coming together, breaking apart, and returning again over hundreds of millions of years. Just as Pangea once gathered the lands, so too will the continents of tomorrow find their way back into union. One vision imagines the Atlantic closing, Africa drifting north to merge with Europe, the Mediterranean disappearing as the seas shrink. Another dream shows the Pacific vanishing instead, its wide waters consumed by converging coasts as Asia and the Americas move closer. In each vision, the result is the same: a future supercontinent, a new Pangea born from the endless patience of stone. This new supercontinent has been given many names by dreamers of science: Pangea Proxima, Novo Pangea, Aurica, Amasia, each name a whisper of what might be. None certain, all possible. What is certain is the drift itself, the slow motion of land pulled by the currents of the mantle, unstoppable as the turning of the stars. Imagine standing upon that far future shore. The outlines of continents would be unfamiliar, seas gathered into a single great ocean, mountains rising where new collisions bind stone to stone. Life, too, would change, finding ways to adapt to the shifting of climate, the reshaping of coasts. The Earth would not be what we know, but it would still breathe, still move, still carry the rhythm of continents drifting together once more. For us, this future is a dream, a story written in the language of deep time. Yet to the Earth, it is only another step, another turning of the dance. The slow drift that began with Pangea has not ended. It continues now, and it will continue until the lands of Earth once again gather in a vast embrace. And so the story comes full circle. The continents will return to one another, and the cycle will begin again. The slow dance of Earth's surface is endless, a gentle reminder that change is the only constant. And time is measured not in days but in continents. The slow dance of Earth's continents continues even now. Drift with us through deep time, and let the rhythm of the planet carry you into rest. Stay close, and subscribe to Cosmic Sleep Science. Chapter 6. The Legacy Beneath Our Feet. Beneath the quiet soil of our present world lie whispers of a time when the continents held each other close, when rivers and forests stretched unbroken across a single land, and the living creatures walked freely without borders. Their remains pressed gently into stone as a memory the Earth still carries. Fossils are the footsteps of vanished lives, fragile records that bind the continents together even now, long after Pangea has scattered into the shape we know. Among these ancient witnesses is Glossopteris, a fern-like plant whose leaves once trembled in the winds of Pangea's forests. its fossils scattered like dried petals across South America, Africa, India, and Antarctica, as if the plant itself had wandered across oceans that did not yet exist. These silent leaves tell us that these lands, now oceans apart, were once neighbors in a shared embrace of green. In the rocks of both South America and Africa rests the small Mesosaurus, a reptile that lived in freshwater rivers more than 200 million years ago. Its bones found on opposite shores of an ocean that came long after its death, proving the continents once touched. And the waters it swam were not seas but streams flowing through Pangea's heart. There is also Cynognathus, a dog-like reptile with teeth sharp for its age. Its fossils discovered across Africa and South America. A traveler whose remains remind us of the free passage life once had across lands now parted by endless waves. Even the tiniest witnesses have a voice, for fossil pollen lies buried in stone across these distant continents. Tiny grains of memory, delicate but enduring, proof that the same vegetation once stretched across the unified earth, and that the winds of Pangea carried life's dust far and wide. Together, these fossils speak softly but clearly, telling us that Earth was once whole, that rivers and forests did not end at coasts, and that creatures walked paths now cut by oceans. When we hold these stones, we hold not just bones or leaves, but the shared memory of continents still drifting, carrying with them the legacy of Pangea beneath our feet. If bones and leaves tell us who once lived, then the imprints of their footsteps tell us how they moved. Delicate trails pressed into mud that hardened into stone. Fragile records of journeys long past, like music that lingers after the song has ended. Trace fossils, as they are called, are not bodies but gestures, frozen whispers of motion that have outlived the creatures themselves. Across ancient mudflats, we find the pathways of amphibians, each small print a reminder of the days when these water-bound beings wandered the shores of swamps and rivers, their trails recording their dependence on wetlands, their slow migration as they searched for pools to breed and to survive. Reptile footprints appear too, pressed deeper into the stone, showing where these hardy creatures began to stride farther inland, carrying the gift of the amniotic egg that freed them from the water, their tracks revealing the beginning of life's journey into the dry interiors of Pangea. These imprints are the first letters in the story of independence from rivers and swamps, a tale written not in ink, but in mud and time. On scattered rocks across many continents, we see the tracks of dinosaurs, some small as birds, others wide and heavy as giants, stamped into the earth when Pangea was whole, preserved across South America, North America, Africa, and Asia. Their spread proof that these lands were once unbroken, their movements unconfined by seas. To follow these trails is to walk beside them, across the vanished plains of a united Earth. Trace fossils show us more than steps. They map entire ecosystems. They reveal where herds once moved, where predators waited, where water receded and returned. They reveal the rhythm of life, the way it flowed across a land now scattered. With each print, we glimpse a moment of presence, a pause of wait, a turn of direction, a small action caught and preserved in the patience of stone. When we look down at these tracks, glowing softly under the imagination of moonlight, we are not just seeing marks in stone. We are seeing stories still alive. They connect us to the creatures who walked before us, and they remind us that Earth remembers more than we imagine, carrying the memory of Pangea in footprints that remain, etched gently into the ground beneath our feet. Beneath the quiet surface of our world lie treasures shaped in the deep silence of Pangea. resources that whisper of forests and seas long vanished, their presence not merely wealth, but memory pressed into stone. When we touch coal, we hold the shadows of ancient swamps, the breath of trees that once stood together on a continent unbroken. These seams of black carbon, stretching across North America, Europe, and Asia, are the remnants of vast Pangea forests, places where ferns and towering plants fell and were buried under time's patient weight, transformed slowly into fuel that carries the warmth of an age long gone. Oil, too, rests in the earth as a gift from Pangea, born from shallow seas that once lapped at the edges of its land, seas that shimmered with tiny life forms drifting in currents beneath the sun. When those organisms fell and settled, layer upon layer, they became part of the sediment, compressed by ages until they turned into petroleum, a silent reservoir of the oceans that once circled the supercontinent. Each drop of oil tells a story of Panthalassa's shallows, of sunlight captured by microscopic lives, of a sea that has long since dissolved into today's scattered coastlines. Even minerals trace the union of continents, for when landmasses collided, mountains rose, and deep in those collisions, heat and pressure forged belts of copper, gold, and iron, threading the crust with veins of memory. These mineral belts stretch across lands now separated, yet they align as if the earth itself marked the seams of its ancient stitching, a geologic reminder of the bonds that once held the continents together. There are also salts, crystalline and silent, lying in thick deposits where great basins once dried beneath the sun. In those vast interiors of Pangea, where waters evaporated faster than they could return, entire lakes left behind their essence, crystallizing into layers that remain even now. These deposits tell us of a climate that was harsh, of a land that baked under a wide sky, of an earth that recorded its extremes in the still language of stone. Coal, oil, minerals, and salt. Each is more than matter to be used. Each is a page in the story of Pangea, kept safe in the ground beneath our feet. When we light a fire, refine a metal, or see salt crystals shine, we are touching fragments of a world that has never truly disappeared, a world whose memory rests quietly in every layer of the earth. The mountains that rise above us are more than peaks of stone. They are storytellers, ancient and enduring, carrying in their ridges the memory of Pangea's birth. Each chain of summits is a chapter in the long history of continents, written not in ink but in granite, shale, and folded layers pressed together by forces unseen. To look upon a mountain is to read a page of Earth's deep memory, carved slowly by the assembly of lands that once embraced as ones. The Appalachians, stretching across North America, were born when Pangea gathered itself together, their ridges the remnants of that great collision. Though worn by time, softened by rivers and forests, they still stand as quiet witnesses to the force that pressed continents into a single form. When the wind moves through their valleys, it carries echoes of an age when stone itself bent beneath the weight of Earth's embrace. Far away, the Ural Mountains rise as the scar of another union, where Europe and Asia once pressed into one another, the suture of Pangea written in their spine. They stand not as isolated peaks, but as a long reminder of that collision, the seam that stitched two lands into a shared story. The Atlas Mountains too carry this memory, born of the African plate's restless push, their rugged slopes tracing the long collisions that built Pangea's western edges. Though modern life surrounds them, their ancient origin remains in every folded layer. Each ridge a line in the poem of Earth's past, even beneath the ground. The roots of mountains tell the story, vast and invisible, sunk deep into the crust like anchors of memory. Geologists call them sutures, the places where continents fuse, the hidden scars of Pangea's making. These sutures are more than marks. They are reminders that the Earth is not still but alive, its surface shaped by the slow dance of plates that continue to drift, collide, and part modern. Mountains rise, rivers carve, peaks crumble, but their legacy endures. The weight of their presence a living monument to the supercontinent that once was. When we stand at their base or gaze at their summits under dawn light, we are not only seeing stone, we are seeing time itself, the patience of Earth lifting its memory toward the sky. Every stone holds a memory of Pangea. Stay with us and subscribe to Cosmic Sleep Science. Chapter 7. Pangea in the Imagination. Long before the word Pangea was ever spoken, long before science began to trace the drift of continents, human beings told stories about a world that was once whole. Around fires and beneath endless skies, storytellers whispered of an original land, a place where all life walked together, where the earth itself was not broken but complete. These myths are not maps or equations, but they are memories of unity, faint echoes of what geology would later confirm. Many cultures across the earth carry tales of great floods, waters that rose to swallow valleys and plains, seas that arrived where once there was land. These myths speak not only of destruction but of change, of the fragile line between land and ocean, of the way Earth shifts beneath us. Though the storytellers could not know of shifting plates or supercontinents, their words echo the truth that seas advance and retreat, that lands are never eternal, and that the Earth is always in motion. The story of Atlantis, told by philosophers in ancient Greece, is one such echo. The vision of a mighty land swallowed by the sea, a vision that stirs the imagination even today. Atlantis may be myth, but it resonates with the deeper memory of lands that have vanished, of continents that once stood together, of Pangea itself slipping into the rhythm of change. Other traditions speak of lost lands too, islands that once connected people, kingdoms that vanished beneath wave, or fertile plains now drowned. These stories carry a poetry that feels timeless, a reminder that even without science, humanity sensed the shifting nature of the ground beneath them, that the earth was not fixed but alive, capable of transformation beyond their sight. Oral traditions are more than tales. They are vessels of memory. They hold fragments of the geologic truth that landscapes change, that seas expand, that rivers carve and mountains rise, and that the land is not eternal. When we listen to these stories, we hear not only human imagination, but also the quiet reflection of Earth's own history, whispered across generations. In this way, myths are not just inventions of the mind, but bridges between memory and the deep rhythms of the planet. They remind us that Pangea is not only written in rocks and fossils, but also in the shared longing for unity, the dream of one land, the fear of its loss, and the recognition that Earth itself holds power far greater than any one age can see. When people first looked at the world around them, the continents seemed like wandering giants, too vast to imagine moving, too permanent to believe they could shift. And yet awe has always lived in the human heart, a quiet wonder that asks whether the earth we stand upon might once have been different. In this way, imagination reached toward truths long before science traced their lines. Early maps, drawn on parchment or carved into stone, often hinted at this wonder. Some showed the continents as though they could be pieced together, their edges fitting like fragments of a puzzle. Even without proof, the human eye noticed the similarities, the curve of South America echoing the shape of Africa, the suggestion that perhaps these lands were once joined. It was not yet geology, but it was intuition, the first glimpse of a deeper unity. Philosophers too dreamed of such unity. They spoke of the earth as a living body, its lands as limbs reaching outward, its seas as veins carrying the breath of life. They wondered if the world had once been a single island, or if it would change again in ages still to come. These thoughts were not testable in their time, but they were seeds planted in the soil of imagination, seeds that would one day bloom into discovery. Across cultures, the image of a single world often appeared in art and myth. Some depicted the earth as a circle surrounded by endless water, others as a vast island at the center of creation. These visions differ in detail, but they share a feeling: the sense that all land was connected, that Earth itself was one. This feeling resonates deeply with what we now know of Pangea, as if the human spirit always carried within it a quiet memory of unity. Imagination has always bridged the distance between what we see and what we cannot yet prove. It carried the idea of Pangea long before the name existed, long before the science could measure it. And in a way, this is what makes the story of the supercontinent so gentle and profound. It is not only a discovery of geology, but also a fulfillment of human wonder, a confirmation that the dreams of storytellers, philosophers, and mapmakers were not entirely wrong. To reflect on this is to feel awe, a slow recognition that science and imagination are not so far apart, that both are ways of listening to the earth. The continents may wander like giants, but in our minds they still carry the memory of being one. And in that memory, we find both the story of Pangea and the story of ourselves, dreamers listening to the deep breath of the planet. In our own age, the word Pangea carries more than geologic meaning. It has become a symbol of unity, a reminder that all the lands we now see apart were once gathered into a single embrace. Musicians have felt its pull, weaving the name into songs that speak of connection and belonging. Melodies that stretch across distance as if to close the space between continents. Writers too have turned to Pangea, finding in its vastness both a canvas for story and a metaphor for the longing to be whole again. In art galleries and studios, the vision of one Earth takes form in brushstrokes and sculpture, sometimes painted as a glowing mass floating against the dark of space, sometimes carved as a mosaic where every fragment is still part of a greater whole. These works are not meant to map geology, but to stir memory, to remind us that division is temporary, that unity once was and may still be imagined. The realm of science fiction and fantasy has also welcomed Pangea, imagining worlds where continents have fused again, or where travelers walk across a boundless land without oceans to divide them. In these stories, the supercontinent becomes a stage for adventure, a place where imagination can roam freely, echoing both the reality of the past and the dream of possibility. The name Pangea carries the weight of myth, yet the grounding of science, making it a bridge between what is known and what can only be dreamed. Even in classrooms, the image of Pangea is powerful. Children trace the outlines of continents on globes and maps, fitting them together like puzzle pieces, eyes widening at the discovery that Earth was once one land. This exercise is more than education. It is wonders, a spark that lights curiosity about the planet and its history. In the story of Pangea, science becomes not a list of facts but a living tale, one that connects deep time to human imagination. When we look at the way modern thought and art return to Pangea, we see not only fascination with geology but a yearning for wholeness. The supercontinent becomes a symbol of connection across oceans and cultures, a reminder that though distance separates us, there was once a time when everything touched. Beyond art and music, Pangea invites reflection, a quiet meditation on what it means to share one Earth, The story of a single landmass reminds us that humanity itself has shared origins, that the divisions we see today are not permanent but born of motion, born of change. Just as continents drifted apart, so too have cultures and peoples spread across the globe. Yet beneath this movement lies a deep unity. To think of Pangea is to be reminded of impermanence. No shape of the earth lasts forever. Not mountains, not seas, not the boundaries drawn between nations. The slow drift of continents whispers of change so vast it humbles us, teaching that even the ground beneath our feet is never still. In this way, geology becomes philosophy, a mirror of our own lives, where change is constant and nothing endures unchanged. Modern climate challenges echo these ancient shifts. Rising seas, warming air, shifting ecosystems, all remind us that Earth continues to breathe and move. Pangea is not a relic of the past, but a teacher for the present, showing us that the planet is alive, that transformation is its nature. In recognizing this, we are invited to live with greater care, to honor the land and seas that hold us, to see ourselves not apart from Earth, but as part of its long unfolding. From Pangea, we learn that unity and diversity are not opposites, but companions. Unity was the beginning, one land holding all life. Diversity followed as continents drifted, shaping new climates, new species, new cultures. Both belong to the story. Both are gifts of Earth's motion. To reflect on this is to see that wholeness and difference can live together, that separation need not mean division, that the Earth itself is both one and many. Thus, Pangea becomes more than geology, more than history. It becomes a meditation on belonging, on impermanence, on the shared memory of a world that was once whole. And in the quiet of night, when we imagine the continents drifting like slow rafts across the sea, we may feel our own lives as part of that same rhythm, carried in the deep breath of time. Every story of Pangea is both science and dream, both memory and vision. The continents still drift, the earth still changes, and our imaginations still seek unity in its vastness. Let imagination and science weave together. Rest with us at Cosmic Sleep Science. Chapter 8. Returning to the Ocean of Time. The story of Earth is not a straight line. It is a slow rhythm, a deep breath that expands and contracts across hundreds of millions of years. The land gathers and then drifts apart again. And this cycle is written in the quiet memory of stone. Long before Pangea, there was another vast continent, Rodinia. Born more than 1 billion years ago, it too held the lands together in one embrace, stretching across the globe like a silent dream. And even before Rodinia, there was Columbia, also called Nuna, an even older gathering of the Earth's wandering plates. Its shape now faint in our imagination, yet still alive in the whispers of geology. This is the cycle of supercontinents, each born in fire and pressure, each breaking under the slow pull of mantle and time. Scientists tell us that such cycles repeat every 300 to 500 million years, and in each turning the face of the planet is transformed. Mountains rise, then wear away. Seas close and open. Climates warm and cool, and life itself bends to the new rhythms of Earth. Rodinia gave way to oceans that stirred new life. Pangea too broke apart to seed the world with diversity. And each cycle has left its mark not only in rocks, but in the story of living things. Forests spread when lands joined. New species flourished when seas opened. And the heartbeat of the earth shaped the path of evolution, as surely as wind shapes the sand. To imagine these cycles is to feel the planet as a living being, not rushing, but breathing in spans too vast for us to measure in days or years. The joining of continents is an inhalation. The breaking apart is an exhalation, and together they form the quiet rhythm of Earth's deep time. In that rhythm lies a comfort, for it shows that change itself is natural, that even the widest oceans and tallest mountains are only moments in a story still unfolding. The rocks beneath our feet are not silent. They are memory keepers, holding within them the record of every union and every drift that the Earth has ever known. In the hidden roots of mountains, geologists find sutures, scars left where ancient continents once collided and fused, silent markers of bonds now long broken. These sutures are like faded lines on an old map, showing where the puzzle pieces once fit before they floated away again. Even smaller than mountains are the crystals that hold memory, zircons that formed billions of years ago and still sparkle with the chemistry of their birth. In their tiny lattices, they preserve traces of ancient heat, ancient water, ancient crust, and by studying them, we can hear echoes of worlds that no longer exist. They are like time capsules, glowing grains of Earth's earliest days that remind us that nothing is truly lost, only transformed. The memory of drift is also written in magnetism, for as molten rock cools, it locks in the direction of Earth's magnetic field, like a compass frozen in time. By reading these magnetic signatures, scientists can trace where continents once wandered, how far they traveled, and when they turned. In this way, even the invisible field of Earth becomes an archive of motion, storing the story of drifting lands within stone. The seafloor itself carries another kind of record, bands of rock that mirror each other across the mid-ocean ridges, each band telling of a magnetic reversal, each pair a page in the long book of spreading seas. When read together, these patterns reveal the opening of oceans, the birth of new crust, the slow widening that pushed continents apart. All these records, sutures in mountains, crystals in stone, magnetic lines in rock, stripes on the ocean floor are Earth's own way of remembering. They remind us that nothing is forgotten, that every shift leaves its mark, that the story of Pangea is only one chapter in a book as old as the planet itself. To rest upon the Earth is to rest upon memory. And in that memory we find not endings but endless continuity. To imagine the future of the continents is to dream in slow motion. A dream that unfolds not in years or centuries, but in spans so vast they seem like eternity. And yet the Earth is already moving toward its next chapter. Scientists tell us that in about 250 million years the lands may once again drift together, closing oceans and forming a new supercontinent. Just as Pangea once held all the continents in a single embrace, so too may there be another gathering, a new shape upon the face of the Earth, glowing softly against the deep canvas of time. The Atlantic Ocean, which now stretches wide and restless, may one day close again. The slow movement of Africa northward hints at a future collision with Europe, a gentle yet unstoppable drift that will raise new mountains where the sea once lay. The Mediterranean, already a remnant of ancient seas, may vanish entirely, folded into the crust as the plates continue their dance. At the same time, the vast Pacific, so immense in our present age, may shrink slowly, its floor swallowed by deep trenches where crust sinks back into the mantle. Models of this future offer visions with names like Pangea Ultima and Novo Pangea, each an attempt to glimpse the Earth's unfolding map. In some, the continents cluster around the equator, forming a band of green and stone across the planet. In others, the land gathers near the poles, creating new climates and strange weather patterns. These are not certainties but gentle speculations, whispers of what may be. like sketches on a parchment of time still to come. Whether the Earth shapes Pangea Ultima or another form altogether, the rhythm remains the same. The long inhalation of union, the long exhalation of separation, a cycle as natural as the tides. To picture continents drifting back into one is to see time as a circle, not a line. A circle that turns slowly, patiently, endlessly. When we look upon these cycles, we see not only geology but also a reflection of life itself. The continents move, always drifting, never fixed. And in their endless wandering, they remind us that nothing is permanent. The mountains we climb, the seas we cross, the lands we call home are only moments in a greater flow. Temporary shapes in an eternal rhythm. Life has always adapted, bending gracefully to the changes of Earth, finding new ways to flourish as seas open and close, as climates shift from warmth to ice and back again. From the first amphibians breathing at the edges of ancient rivers to the great reptiles roaming Pangea, to us now watching the story unfold. Each chapter is written by change, and each chapter teaches resilience. The oceans, too, remind us of impermanence, for they widen and vanish across ages, giving birth to coral reefs, then swallowing them, scattering islands only to gather them again. Their song is one of openness and closure, a lullaby as old as the earth itself, soothing in its constancy even as it tells of endless change. In these rhythms we may find comfort, for they show us that the earth endures. The continents will drift and meet. The oceans will open and close, but the cycle itself will remain. To rest with this knowledge is to rest with the lullaby of our planet. A song without beginning or end. A song that carries us gently into sleep.